So, Kholiwe, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we
Thank you.
walk
Thank you.
before we walk into the future, can you please tell us, where did you grow up?
Awesome. Thanks a lot for the question. Before I start, I must just introduce my name is Kholiwe, and Kholiwe means to believe. And it's funny, my surname is the opposite of to believe, but I think my parents really did correct that misanomaly. I am the mother of a 48-year young mother of two beautiful kids. And a 21-year-old son, soon to be turning 22, and a 14-year-old beautiful daughter. Born and raised in Mount Olive, former Transkei in Mount Olive village, to a family of a traditional family of boys and very few girls, and I'm the last born. Born to raised by two parents. My mom was a well-respected nurse and father. My father was also a leading top English, Afrikaans, and history teacher who really instilled in me some strong values of respect, integrity. Unfortunately, both parents have departed. Yes.
And tell us, what was your dream career when you grew up?
It's interesting when I listened to some of the podcasts and even some of the interviews. Funny is that the common profession that comes across is that of being a doctor. And I think part of that reason is because, doctors were revered, during that time, and there was not much, to look into, and the respect they were afforded in the community. And it was automatic to want to be a doctor. But for me, what's fascinating, I wanted to be the doctor because I used to give my parents, after meals, I would ration their medication. So I knew every medication for their ailments. But sadly, I knew that I was not great at science. So I decided to change thought. And I was aspired to be a magistrate again. It was also because the magistrates in our village were well respected, similar to the doctors. But I think when the school introduced accounting and business economics at our school, and someone loving challenges, which I didn't know at the time, I took on the challenge of taking on accounting and business economics, which I think also the teacher who came to the school was such a bold, confident young lady. She was called Miss Notrete. And I was really inspired looking at her with such level of confidence to say, this is what I'm going to do, aspiring to be in the commerce sector and as a chartered accountant here.
Right. And tell us, Kholiwe, who inspired you in your early days?
Allow me, Doc, to go all out on this one, because there's not one person. We are raised by a village. There are many great men and women who really played a huge role in our lives and in my life and career. And unfortunately, I may not be able to mention most of them, but you have to start with my parents. I start with my parents. And I think for those of us who have been fortunate to be raised by our parents, and both of them, for me, brought the best in me. And because of the many challenges that they took and made for us to have a better life. My mom, for her courage and resilience, she went back to school at the age of 52 to complete a nursing diploma. And I think when I look at it today, it's amazing that I am close to 52. I'm 48 years young. And I thought at that time she was really old. And I think for me, I would work until I, pass 65, because I believe there's a lot to offer. So she really instilled in me that strong, courageous, perspective. She was a matriarch, known at the hospital where she was working as a strong, tough woman, passionate about nursing. Her patients loved her. Her smile would radiate when she engages with them. with the patients, but she was tough with the staff. And she took me with when she went to study at the varsity. And something that I'm really grateful for is it exposed me to a life that was outside my village, because I grew up in that village and I didn't know anything better other than the few trips that I used to take during the month to Kokstad accompanying my dad. And I think that inspired me a passion for learning for someone and exposed to different worlds. I've mentioned my father is proud spiritual man, pillar of strength at home. We grew up without a car, without the key material things. But every time I'd accompany him going to town during month end, taking a taxi, he'll be dressed to the T with his gray shiny suit. And I think many in the village remember him by that, and a tie. And I would be walking behind him with his head held high with so much pride. And he never sat at the back seat, always in front. And if we came there and the front seat was occupied, people would respectfully make way for him. And he never demanded that, because he was really a man of integrity and humility. And he was afforded that because people respected him, not because of the material things he had, and the possessions, but the way he upheld himself in society with integrity. Money was not a matter of fact on that one. But Doc, a number of people in my career, I must say, have played a huge role, as I've mentioned, from women teachers at school, varsity, and in the workplace, and including great men who had potential. Other key that I'm just going to mention in 1 minute, who inspired me, was a family member, Mr. Don Nobe. He was a former Anglo-American executive, and one of the doyens in this industry that many, have looked up to him in their early careers, as well as Ms. Nonkululeko Gobodo, who was the first female chartered accountant at the time, who made it possible that a girl child from a village can dream. And I've followed a great number of leaders in the careers who had fires burning in them, who had vision, but had lost course. And it is key to learn from those leaders for us not to repeat the same mistakes. And my interest at the time was what influenced them to take a different path and course, missing the vision that they had at the beginning of their career, so that as a future leader and an aspiring leader, to be conscious not to repeat the same fate, and ensure what I need to do when I reach that tipping point, because at some point in our careers, we are going to meet challenges and we may forget the vision that we took, when we were starting out. So it's the myriad of people that really have shaped, my career and where I am. And there are a number of them. I can mention Dr. Figeni. When I was doing some tertiary qualification, when I was tertiary, just to help my parents in terms of financial support, I took a job from him. He was doing some research, and I took a job from him doing some part-time, which exposed me to some of the abject poverty in the area. But that also helped me to expose me to what is happening around the world. And I think Dr. Figeni, as we know today is one of the well-respected people around. He comes from the village, and he also inspired me. Yeah.
And Kholiwe, looking back over your career, would you say there was a turning point, or maybe a number of turning points?
There's been quite a number of turning points, Doc, in my career. I've changed a career and course over the past, 20 or more years that I've been in this industry. I started off as an auditor, moved to being a CFO, consulting and sales, and now I'm the MD of few organizations. I was an MD at Oracle, and now currently in the role that I'm in. So those were most of those successes that I've amassed through the change course in my career. Some hard lessons were learned, whilst at the peak of my career. And I think as an example, I make mention to people around Oracle. My career grew significantly there, under great leadership, inspiring leaders. And yet most of the challenges and the crucibles came from there. And it's because when you grow into leadership position, one must expect to have challenges along the way, and how to turn them into transformative advantage is a choice that we have to take in life. So some of those crucibles have, broadened my perspective in my leadership journey, and how to do good and really learn from those mistakes. I used to joke with my friends to say the scars and awards that I had over the years will make me a great CEO when I'm 50. I'm left with less than 2 years. Hopefully, it will be only awards going forward. Yes.
Right. And Kholiwe, what would you say is driving you today?
I'm driven by passion, a life of impact, a life of significance, Doc. Making a difference in whatever small role I play. And I have to applaud people like you who've taken the challenge to really build, future leadership for our country. I've got a great quote that I love by Kevin Hall, who is an author of Aspire. And here's the quote that I love and I try to apply and emulate in my life. He says, your gifts are not about you. Your purpose is not about you. A life of significance is about serving those who need your gifts, your leadership, and your purpose. And I've been grateful, as I've mentioned, the people who inspired me, along my journey. I've been grateful also in the organizations that I'm leading, that I'm able to be afforded the opportunity to give back, drive true transformation, whether it is at our customers, with our technology innovation, our employees, or the country transformation, which is at the heart of what we need to be doing to really ensure that we are changing the face of this country one step at a time. And, I've been fortunate that I've been a trustee and the chairperson of Sparrow Education Trust. It's a non-profit organization which strives to provide young, disadvantaged South Africans with cognitive barriers to learning opportunity to access the quality education. It's run by another aspiring visionary woman, Jackie Gallagher, someone you really respect for what she has done. She had other options, but she took this risk. So for me, life of impact and significance is something that I would want to continue to do. I don't think I'm doing enough.
Now, Kholiwe, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
Wow. For me, Doc, this is a broad question with a number of, responses that may come through. But, today, we are seeing great shifts and a period of great reset in the aftermath of COVID. And I think that has changed the way we have got to view leadership from the traditional leadership, that we really know. It has necessitated us in changing the view of what we need to do during these trying times. We need conscientious leaders and conscious leaders who are able to galvanize and rally people for a common goal, but I must mention for a common good, because you could lead astray, leaders when you are not taking the right path. And it is not easy to have that trait. It needs to be nurtured. You need to either be, aware and conscious about it, or you can say you can be a born leader, which I'm not sure how many of us are born leaders, because we had to nurture our leadership skills. And we need a leadership, and for me, a leader who leads with empathy, with a clear vision and boldness. And I think we've seen great leaders, and I dare say women leaders during COVID, who led their countries out of the pandemic, who led with empathy. Mention of, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, Minister of Taiwan. They led with diligence, with empathy during those times. We need to emulate such leadership styles. And, we've got future generations that now are expecting more. So even besides asking what kind of leadership we need from these youngsters, we need to also to emulate and be exemplary in types of leaderships that we want our future leaders to really embody.
Right. And Kholiwe, what have you learned from your own leadership journey that you consider most important for building future leaders?
I'll say, Doc, we must not let setbacks derail us from our aspirations. They must not. They need to forge ahead. Also to nurture those skills and continue to learn, and mostly from the mistakes. Sometimes we shy away to talk about the crucibles that we've faced as leaders in this industry, which is a reality. And I have had many of those in my journey. I've learned that crucible moments and setbacks are inevitable in the lives of those who are really seeking the bigger calling and the bigger vision. And I've also learned that, as I've mentioned, we are bound to experience those at one point in our life. They truly test our capability for leadership. And there's an author in the future leadership context who said, we must think of a crucible as a transformative experience from which you extract your gold, which is gold leadership, to find a new altered way and a sense of who you want to be. And that can shine the light into the world. And I think Bill George, in his book, Finding Your True North on Authentic Leadership, focuses a lot on some of the great world leaders who had their crucibles when they were growing up, but were able to turn those into gold and make a huge impact into the society, wherein you are able now to balance your organizational impacts and profits with philanthropy and giving back. And I think those are the kinds of leaders I strive to emulate, and hopefully we'll have more as we go along. Yes.
Now, Kholiwe, as you said, these are challenging times. And what is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What are some of the biggest challenges future leaders should expect to encounter and hopefully overcome in their career?
Yeah, thank you, Doc. Last week, I had an opportunity to host a women's CIO event in collaboration with CIOSA. And we're discussing, as the women CIOs, the topics that are keeping us awake at night, emerging trends that these women CIOs need to be really aware of when they are driving strategies in their organizations. Topics ranging from AI, how to use those technologies in organizations, digital transformation, cybersecurity, and some of the regulatory, matters. And we had an opportunity to have Dr. Andile Ngaba as our guest, and he encouraged us to have a broad perspective, in our outlook as leaders, not only to focus on our current roles, but to look beyond the roles that have an impact globally, aspect of, ESG, how we contribute to the massive skills shortage in our country, the infrastructure challenges that the country is facing. So I would say some of the challenges, which I want to call opportunities, is that let's broaden our horizon in terms of what leadership is all about. It's not only about what I can gain or achieve in a KPI in my current role, but what impact am I making into the society? So those technology shifts are critical because the world is really evolving in the manner in which we do our things, driving decisions, etc., in terms of addressing some of the socio-economic challenges. Yes.
Now, Kholiwe, since you mentioned skills, what would you say are some of the new skills that future leaders should embrace and learn?
Yes. And I think, Doc, from aspect of personal development, etc., I wouldn't call them new skills per se, but more emphasis in terms of certain skills that have been looked down upon when you're expecting a certain type of a leader. And I've mentioned, empathy, humility, and adaptability as a leader, being agile in ever-changing, times, but also to be entrepreneurial, to really have leaders who are creative thinkers, innovators. And as countries and leaders, we need to really support and nurture them, and not only to focus on them finding jobs. They must be in the creation of jobs, because there's so much that the existing companies can do today. And with the high rate of unemployment, uncertainty in our country, political instability, threats of recession, the great listing, you can mention many. We are at a pinnacle of a great shift and a great reset. We need to hit that reset in terms of how we need to do things. So the leader who was there 15 years ago should not be the same leader today. So those are the shifts in terms of nurturing those young minds and future leaders to steer them towards the entrepreneurship, be purpose and impact driven, I must say, rather than be self-serving, developing what I had called earlier, conscientious and conscious leadership, to be aware of the environments that are surrounding us, to do right and do it diligently, because there are no shortcuts, there are no quick wins, and we need to be less egocentric and less self-serving for us to forge forward as a country. But other aspects is what I mentioned earlier on around the technology skills that they need. You know, there's a huge wave now around AI. You know, technology shifts like for IR and your 5G. AI tools, how do we use the AI tools responsibly to enhance our business, you know, objectives and imperatives, whilst we are really mindful of the security and regulatory perspective. And I would urge that we really use those technologies responsible for the greater good in solving some of the challenges in our country. And I must say, I've been fortunate to be in the technology industry to see this wave of shift and also, you know, give opportunities to these SMEs and the young startups to use the technology for the greater good of our country, I must say.
Thank you. And Kholiwe, you mentioned some of your mentors. Now, yourself as a mentor to future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
And again, I'll ask to just go all out, Doc, on this one, because it's another area I'm really passionate about. You know, I've engaged and took time to share my journey and wisdom where I can with a number of future leaders who have now become much more successful than I have been. And I wouldn't really call them mentees in this context that I'm going to be discussing, but just seeing someone who has such huge, great potential, but not able to see their huge potential, and my edge and passion to shine that light on their greatness and helping them to greater heights. I've taken that initiative. You know, I love to see people grow. And I think the few that come to mind for me, you know, I've got someone now who's now a CIO at one of the state-owned entities. One is a partner director at one of the leading consulting houses. One is a CEO in a parastatal and head of technology in the financial services. One is at a telecommunications industry. When I sit and engage with them, it is amazing how much now I am learning from them and how they have grown beyond where I am. And I really am in awe when I look at them and what I've achieved. But I've also, in the roles that I've played here and in other organizations, I've been fortunate that I have been able to really nurture young minds in their careers in terms of challenges. And I'm someone who is have a passion of bringing young blood into the organization. So I've got some of the graduates that I've mentored who are in the organization, and it is interesting how they challenge you, you know, and you look back and like, hey, you know, I groomed you, you shouldn't be talking to me like that, but they are really, really passionate. And this is what we want to see, youngsters who are challenging us. But one guy I just want to mention, it comes from my young days at Accenture. And I've mentored this guy, and we've remained friends. And he's now a leader in his own right. And his name is Blessing Mahlalela. At the time, I didn't really know I was making a huge impact in my life. But one day he rocked up at my house with a brand new BMW and had bought me nice gift. It was a wallet and a sunglasses, something I still treasure today. But, you know, Blessing has never been employed in his career. And he was clear when we were engaging. He used to challenge me a lot. He's now a co-founder and CEO of M Factory. It's an innovation-driven mobile application company. And he's also a founder and CEO of a TechnoSeed. It's an NGO that is focused on technology that is exposing the unemployed to youth mobile application skills and development. You can check him out, Doc, on www.mfactory.mobi. That guy, it's when you look at the greatness and visionary young leaders that are coming up today that you really feel honored that you have had an opportunity to really be there to see them grow. Yeah.
And Kholiwe, looking back over your leadership career and maybe your learning journey, are there any role models of leadership that you have encountered and that future leaders should study and learn from?
When I first saw this question, I was like excited and went all out in terms of the aspiring future leaders. I think and believe, the country has not yet seen. We've studied many leaders in our previous lives that made us to be where we are today. So I just thought, I'm not going to change this. Let me really continue on this, on what I put through. I've got a black book, Doc, of Black dynamic women whom I believe have made a huge impact in this country and are still continuing in their small way, to do great things, who are so deserving to really shine light, to ensure that we shine light on them and are doing great things. And I've encountered along the way and inspired me. And I will give you just a few shopping list around me. Usara Khumalo, I'm sure you know about her. She's the first female, Black African to climb Mount Everest. And she's now on a quest, to do a Grand Slam Explorer, 7 summits and 2 North Poles, as something, we need to be really celebrating and showing, every girl child that it is possible. She's a former executive at Momentum, but she is doing this, and she's got summits with a purpose that she established. And people like us now took interest in hiking and mountaineering. I did my Kilimanjaro last year through her organization. And she's not only doing that, she's doing that to expose and ensure that she supports educational programs that will uplift and upskill some of the youngsters out there. I can make mention of many names. Kholiwe Makhohliso, who's now the chair at the University of Johannesburg Council. She's also the CEO of ICT Works. I also have Ujeki Galaga that I've mentioned, who's the CEO of Sparrow Schools. There's a whole lot. I can send you a list, but these are some of the women I want to believe we have to expose out there. Mabalwa Ngonyama is one of them. Uzela Fupe, she is at NTT as a Chief Risk Sustainable Officer. And youngsters who have opened and founded their own companies, because it's not easy. Sometimes we think it's a comfort zone to go and be employed, but for someone who can take charge and go and open their own organization to really make an impact in this society. Last week I had an honor during Women's Day to sit with Mamukete Ramate. She's a young girl, very aspiring, and she's a founder of and CEO of Mamo Capital, and she sits on various boards. I've got a colleague and a friend, Usisanda Tuku. She's a founder of Teza Capital. They are in financial services. And why I'm mentioning these youngsters, Doc, is that there's many of us who have learned from the great leaders whom we are rising and we're standing on the shoulders of. But I think to your podcast, it's the future leaders that we need to nurture, and bring out there. And I get all excited when I talk about them. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, Kholiwe, how can our listeners follow you, and where should they connect with you?
The most interesting thing about me is I am a reluctant social media tech executive. So I'm not in all the social networks. But I am active on LinkedIn, where I'm grateful that you found me. So they could also find me there and follow me there.
And last but not least, Kholiwe, what is your piece of advice to the millions of learners who are looking to enter the world of work? What are maybe 1 or 2 success factors they should keep in mind when building a career?
No, thank you, Doc. I've mentioned earlier on, I would say don't get distracted in your journey by traps that you will really encounter along the way. Turn those crucibles into transformative ways and turn them to gold. Continue in your journey, even though there's no one clapping for you, because at some point you will feel lonely, so long as you are doing the right things. And I would say, be clear in your vision and dream. Even if you take a detour, you must come back to it and know what you want and what legacy you want to leave behind for future generation. If I may emphasize to the leadership that we are really experiencing today, don't seek instant glory. Don't go for shortcuts either. You remember that, people have left great legacies are not really revered today. They are only revered when they have left this world. But I think we've got an opportunity to do good and to do great whilst we are on this earth and making an impact that is going to be visible. And in parting, Doc, I just want to leave this quote or an extract that I love very much, and I've used it for many years. It's from Paulo, one of the authors, Paulo Coelho. It is in one of his 20-second reads he used to write. It is called Harvest Time, and this is what I would love to leave the listeners with. It says, success does not come from having one's work recognized by others. It is the fruit of the seed that you lovingly planted. When harvest time comes and arrives, you can say to yourself, I succeeded. You succeeded in gaining respect for your work because you did not only survive, but to demonstrate love for others and giving back. I must say, you managed to finish what you began, even though you did not foresee all the traps along the way. And when your enthusiasm waned because of the difficulties you encountered in life, you reached for discipline. And when that discipline seemed to disappear because you are tired, you used your moments of repose to rethink about what steps you needed to take in the future. You were not paralyzed by the defeats that are inevitable in the lives of those who take risks and dream big and who have visions. Let us build a lasting legacy whilst we're still alive, and let us make an impact. And the question is, what are we going to do as a collective going forward to change the course of where we are as a country today? Wishing all the best for the industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kholiwe, for sharing your wisdom and your insights and your journey into the future of leadership, and for inspiring so many future leaders.
I thank you. Thank you, Doc.